what is it about, our bodies and human immortality and how you could distinguish it from digital immortality? If I uploaded my brain onto the cloud, how would that be different compared to this body and how I am today?
Yeah, I think there could be no difference essentially. Although the first question you asked me here was about consciousness essentially and self-awareness. One thing I think that will always be special about humans to me is that I can be very confident that they're conscious in a very similar way to me because they're very physically similar. Our brains are 99.9% the same structurally. Maybe our neuronal connections are slightly different, but the overall structure is kind of the same. I can't say the same of a computer. I can't say the same of weights of a neural network necessarily. So that's what's special about humans. Although I'm fairly confident that you can get the same structures that create consciousness in a silica, in silicon instead of carbon-based life.
Yeah. But it's hard to verify. That's the key issue, right?
Yes.
You don't
Yes.
want to take that risk.
Yeah, people often break down consciousness into two parts. There's the easy part, the easy problem, and the hard problem. The easy problem is that of self-awareness, where I think my favorite way I've heard it put is by this guy, Wojciech Zaremba from OpenAI. His claim is intelligence is compression. And if you compress hard enough, the compressor will eventually be compressed as well. And that comes in the form of creating a concept of self. So if you call me the compressor, the thing that takes in raw sensory input and turns it into concepts in my brain, eventually I'll become one of those concepts because it's more efficient to model that, to predict the future or to not die. Anyway, this is the easy problem of consciousness. I say this is a relative scale. It's probably not easy on its own. But then you have the hard problem of consciousness, which is, what is that feeling you feel when you see the color red or when you taste the taste of vanilla ice cream? What is that? It's hard to communicate, but I would hope we all experience it. So people often call those feelings the concept of qualia, which is sort of the unit of sensory sensation, of like a subjective experience. Although one sort of controversial opinion I have is that consciousness is just a social construct. And this concept of qualia only exists at the level of a neuron firing in your head. This doesn't actually exist objectively, just in my own experience at the time. And one book that influenced me on this was, I read this a couple of months ago. It's called For Bacteria to Bach and Back by Daniel Dennett. What I like about his claim is it sort of unravels this whole, I would say, story around consciousness. And says your only support for the claim of consciousness is the vehemence of your claim. So I can only really give you evidence that I'm conscious by how confident I am that I see the color red or I imagine the taste of vanilla ice cream. And there's no real way to verify beyond my convincing you of that.
Yeah. So much of this is also based on this theme of attachment. This concept of self that we were so attached to. Do you feel there's a dis there's a difference, the line that we can draw between discomfort, suffering, and unnecessary attachment to our bodies, to our identity, the self, because all of it keeps changing. How do we ensure that we live more in alignment with reality that keeps changing? Uh,
Yeah, that's an excellent question you're asking. So the concept of self, I see it as pretty related to that of consciousness. It's essentially the belief that we're persistent in time and that there's some distinction between the inside and the outside world. But yeah, I think about this in a similar way to consciousness, and that it's a useful story to tell. But there's no objective truth to this, in my opinion. It's instead the analogy I really like is we're essentially like language models predicting the future states, but we have this context, which is our history. And so, of course, what I say in the next moment is largely influenced by my history. There's no objective concept saying this is the thing that's you. It's instead I'm made up of a bunch of particles acting in accordance with physical laws. Um, maybe that's a really kind of cold, calculating way to put it, but I think if we want to be objective, that's kind of true. Um, but all that being said, I think the concept of self is extremely useful and necessary to operate socially. Like it's hard for me. I've probably said the word I and me 100 times during our conversation, and if I didn't, it would be kind of a weird, weird conversation, right? I would say be talking in the third person all the time. Doesn't quite make sense. So it's all kind of philosophical, but at the end of the day, it's more practical to think of things in terms of self.